Unstoppable kick-ass confidence. Are you ready?
Welcome to the Raw and Unscripted Show with Christopher Rausch, where we help you overcome your self-created crap without the self-help fluffy bullshit. Now please welcome our host, Christopher Rausch.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of Raw and Unscripted with yours truly, Christopher Rausch. I'm your No Excuses coach, and I am here to help you guys take away the blockages, take away the negative beliefs and the negative self-talk, take away all those self-limiting actions that you're doing and the self-sabotaging for you to actually change your mind and your mindset about what it is that you've experienced in your life in order to have a kick-ass life. I'm Christopher Rausch, your host, and I'm excited to be here with you guys tonight. And we have an amazing show for you. As always, ladies and gentlemen, I'm celebrating 4-year anniversary of the Raw Unscripted Show. I'm so excited. I can't believe that it's been since 2019 that I've been doing this show, and it's been a labor of love. There is no labor involved in it because it is Raw and Unscripted. It's all from my heart. But we're celebrating tonight, show number 247. And that's pretty cool, because when you think about the fact of what it is that we talk about here on the show, they talk about consistency. We talk about discipline. We talk about showing up day after day after day. And sometimes people would think after 4 years that I should be more popular, but I'm more popular than I was 3 years ago. And I'm more popular than I was 2 years ago. And it's not about the popularity. It's the fact that I'm impacting more and more lives around this beautiful thing we call the world. And you guys know I'm an inclusive person. So this show is all about the fact that how we can rewire ourselves so that we can become better within ourselves, become better within our families, be better within our communities, be better within our jobs, and feed that out so that we can make this world a better place for who we are and what we do. And that's my intention every single day that I wake up in the morning, is that I can use my words, my actions, my experiences to make this world a better place, no matter how it is that I feel. Sometimes I don't feel necessarily the best, and we still show up. You still show up because why? Because you have a big enough why. You sit there and say, because I don't feel like it. That's a bullshit excuse. And you guys know that I'm a no excuses coach. So if you don't feel like it, but do you feel like the result? Part of it is that motion in motion. It's like the fact that we have to sit there and put ourselves in that place to sit there and say, I'm really, really disciplined. I'm really going to do my best. And one of the things we're going to be talking about tonight on the show is how we can remove those self-limiting blockages, how we can sit there and reframe our mindset about what has happened in our past. Because my belief is this, and this is what the show is going to be prefaced on: everything that has happened in your life and in my life, and everything that is happening now in our lives currently, is what is preparing us for what's next. So when you think about that, everything that's happened, everything that's happening is preparing us for what's next. And my guest tonight, we were already having a fire conversation before we even hit the record button tonight. So I'm excited to have him on here. He's a dear friend of mine. I've been on his shows. He's been on our shows with his co-host. We're just looking forward tonight to having a great conversation. So I encourage you, write this shit down. Write it down. Not only write it down, but then create some action items for yourself, create some follow-up for yourself, create a little mini action guide for yourself, and say, hey, listen, the stuff that I learned in this program, I'm going to dedicate myself over the next 3 months to really implement these things on a consistent daily basis. And let's see what changes in my life, because if you continue to do what you've always done, you will continue to get what you've always got. And I believe that is Dr. Wayne Dyer. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Raw and Unscripted Show, my brother, Mr. Brian Kelm. What's going on, Brian? What's going on, man? Good to see you, man. Thank you for being here.
I feel like I'm in the ring ready to, give somebody a pile driver or something.
Let's go. Pile driver.
Give me
you
a
know
slim.
what's funny? When I had long hair, how many times I got in public, people thinking that I was a wrestler.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I can't even remember the names. One of them was this biker dude. I can't remember the something. The kids across the street, his dad said, hey, my kids want to know if you're the Crusher or some biker dude. Because I used to be like really big. And I was like, no, I said, but that's kind of funny. But yeah, every once in a while I had that, but now I was never wrestling on TV.
You need to do some of those like little small wrestling events where you're the PA announcer. Welcome to the ring.
We're here to talk about your experiences tonight. And my first question for you, Brian, given what we've just talked about before we even went live, and we were talking about some fire stuff, in your place where you're at right now, knowing what I do here on the show, what do you want to get across most to people tonight? When you're thinking about what it is that you have in your heart of hearts to get to people tonight, it's the beginning of the year. We're in January. People are thinking resolutions. They're thinking the new me, new year, new me. What is it in your heart you want people to really fucking digest in this conversation? Then let's go dig in it.
Sure. Number two, there's nothing wrong. Okay. If you're alive and you're functioning, we're all dealing with struggles, but you're alive and you're here, right?
Yep.
Number one, that's fact. Number two is that it goes back to when I do coaching, right? And I often look at all the excuses of why people, and I'm talking like hands-on master of ceremony, storytelling, where you're up in front of a camera for 2 days. It's intense. You're doing takes. You're giving your heart out by every take that you do on video and about what your delivery is. Are you willing to confront yourself?
Can you go deeper on that?
Yeah, sure. Are you willing to confront yourselves where it's like, you know, maybe, you know, and everybody that's watching this, check for yourself. It's like, you know, in my industry, it's like, you know, leave your ego at the door is a common expression when it comes to training or education, but it goes a lot deeper than that. That's like the bumper sticker, right? And I learned about this a couple of years ago because I'm like, okay, I spent some time, and I'm a big psychology guy. It's one of my degrees. And so I'm like, there's got to be a deeper root of why people don't train, whatever it is. It doesn't matter if it's for profession or personal development or whatever. And it's like a lot of them were bumper stickers, but then I took on all the excuses I've ever heard over 30 years, right? And what I was left with was in the macro sense is somebody that's unwilling to confront themselves, like deep down to their core.
The truth and the honesty of where they're at, right? They continue to lie to themselves thinking they're going to get away with it, right? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is because number one, everything like their presence is usually external. You know, they have a big name, they have a big following. A lot of people, you know, aspire to be them. Yeah. But that's all external. We don't know what's really going on inside. Right? Oh, yeah. Why does somebody resist in doing training? Okay. And obviously people are going to find out their own understandings or even if they care. But for me, that's where it hits the fan. You're unwilling to confront yourselves. But because it's like you can take all the accolades or what you hear about certain training or whatever, but the only thing that matters is, and I remember getting in heated debates with people where I'm like, it's easy to say what this training is when you've never done it before. Number two is people that have done the training before, you hear about why they did it. Like maybe their intention was to prove people wrong or to disrupt the chain versus like do what the training is by design, right? To get the results. And so going back to what you asked me is like, number one is everything's okay. And number two is, are you willing to confront yourself? Because, and this is a daily journey. We're, you know, I don't want to speak for you, Christopher, but we do this every day. It's really important to you, right? But the biggest thing that you're always going to be playing a game with is yourself in the form of your mindset. All the, you know, and I suffer from anxiety and depression. And don't get me wrong, those demons are there every day. Oh yeah. But you know, kind of like going back to that old about the Indians, right? Which one do you fuel? Right? Yeah, the wolf. Or which wolf do you feel? Do you feel, you know, the one about you know, the one for the good in you or the one that's not so good in you? And that's a daily choice, right? And what I've realized, at least for myself, is that all of this can be broken up into three different things. If you're not feeling well, if you're a little off kilter, it can be broken down to three simple things. Are you getting proper sleep, right? Whatever that is, everybody's DNA is different, okay? For me, it's anywhere between 6 3/4 hours and 7.5, right? That's my sweet spot because if I get less, I'm a little groggy. I might have more of a dependency with caffeine. But if I get more than that, I'm more like a zombie, right? Yeah,
I feel you.
Number two is proper diet, whatever that looks like, right? Yep. And then number three is exercise. You know, for me, I'm over 1,400 days in a row walking miles, you know, 4 to 20 miles a day, you know, outside in the frigid temperatures of Wisconsin, you know. So look at yourself. It's like, okay, because it's a domino effect. If you get lack of sleep on a consistent basis, you're probably going to make bad food choices. You're probably going to be irritable. You know, all of this affects everything, and it's a domino effect. So hopefully that answers your question. You know,
no, it does. It does. No, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. And it's funny because I know that we share a brain. We've talked about this over the years that we've known each other. Is I tell people it's the 5. So I'm going to build on what you said. So definitely agree with those. So I call it the 5. I'm like, it's hydration, nutrition, sleep, exercise, and vitamin D. So I found in my own personal life, looking back on when I was out of sorts, what things were missing in my life. And so I got an Aura ring. I track my sleep every night. And so I started realizing, I'm like, before I used to be like, oh, I only get 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. It was like my little badge of honor, you know, and I was burning myself. I was in my 20s and my 30s. So you can kind of do that back then. But then I started realizing, I'm like, God, I go to sleep exhausted and I wake up tired. People would come to work and they'd be like, oh my God, I feel so refreshed when I wake up in the morning. I'm like, I have never felt that. I have never felt refreshed in the morning. And so I started biohacking sleep. I spent about a year and a half biohacking sleep and just reading all the studies studies about sleep and the deep sleep and the REM sleep and the circadian rhythms and the, are you a late nighter or an early morninger? You got your chronotype and all this different stuff. And so I started tracking my sleep with it, and I started realizing, okay, wow, when I eat late, guess what? I don't get deep sleep, my heart elevated during the night, my body temperature is higher, so I'm not getting, okay, so stop doing that. And I started realizing that. So out of all those different things, and even in the vitamin D standpoint, I went 14 days without seeing the sun here in Southern California, which is crazy because they say it doesn't rain in Southern California, but it's raining right now. But one time, years and years ago, I finally found that there was this point, and I don't suffer with the anxiety and depression. I deal with it. I don't suffer with it. So I'm a little clarifying that, but I do have those challenges by all means. Yeah. I'm not perfect. People sit there and think, oh, you're always so positive and happy. I'm like, you don't see me in between. I just know how to get myself out of that a lot quicker than I used to. Right. Rather than taking 6 months, it used to take 6 weeks, then it took 6 days. Now I can probably get out of it in about 6 hours. Mm-hmm. But part of me likes to go down that rabbit hole in order to find out what it is I'm supposed to be learning about myself. So I don't try to eliminate it because it makes me grow. But anyways, that's the other part. So I found out that I didn't see the sunlight, and I found I was depressed. I was like, oh my God, I feel so sad. And I feel just despondent. I was driving home and I just felt like crying. I was listening to yacht rock radio, and I was like, Christopher, sailing takes me, instead of like an Iron Maiden. I was like, oh, wait, Chris, you haven't seen the fucking sunshine in like 10 days. And then once the sun came out, I felt better. So I made it a point that when it was, in the wintertime, I supplement with vitamin D, or I found out that simple as 10 minutes of walking outside every single day can help you. So I started taking a 10-minute walk at the middle of the day. I called it my midday reset. I would go out and listen to some positive vibes or, binaural beats or whatever it was, get some vitamin D. And I found if I took care of those 5 areas, especially the hydration part, amazing stuff starts to happen. But I want to go back to what you said before, when we said confronting ourselves, because I think that's important, that honesty. I was just telling somebody the other day, and I said, why do you keep lying to yourself thinking that you're gonna believe that? Right. Like, you keep lying to yourself. Do you realize how fucking stupid that is? And they're like, well, it's not really lying. I'm like, what do you call it? Well, I'm kind of giving myself, I'm like, no, you're lying. Just be honest with yourself and stop doing it. And guess what? Things will change. But how do you recommend somebody go through that process of confrontation? And is it a timeliness thing? Is it like you just have to be ready to do it? Or is it something you can create in a confrontational standpoint, but a learning standpoint?
Great question. I think it's where you got to separate yourself from people. I really do. And not in a bad way, but just in a way where, like Harvey McKay said, we're our own biggest project, right? Yeah. We're the single biggest project we're ever gonna maneuver and all of that. And what I mean by that is that, I've separated myself from the noise, like we talked about a couple weeks ago offline about all the, divisiveness of the world and all of these different things. You really have to stop that, right? Mm-hmm. You really have to come in your own based on your core belief system, what you value. And that's another thing. If you haven't defined it, you never can live it, So I think it's really the first step would be is to cut out all the noise, right? So you can just focus on you and nobody else, right? Yeah. Number 2 is I think you have to be very harsh on yourself in terms of, now I've got training in the performing arts and theater. So it's like that, those critiques and all of that, there's a distinction there is that it's not personal, right? It's based on your performance of what you delivered on stage, right? So there's a theater background element to that, which if you don't have it, I get it. It might be a little different for you. Number 2 is I think you got to have the utmost integrity. Your integrity has got to be so spot on. And what a lot of people think is that it's like a one-time thing. And it's like, no, it's day by day, right? Yep. Every day that you're granted. And if you're out of integrity, just restore it right away. First thing, if you're running late with somebody, restore it. Hey, I didn't leave as early as I should. I just want to let you know. They're probably going to look at you crazy because the way that the world is, it's like, that's just kind of commonplace where people are late, but they don't own up to it. And then all of a sudden that becomes a cultural normalcy, if you will. Mm-hmm. Instead of like, hey, your time is valuable. And it should be to the point where you value their time more than you do yours, because clearly you didn't value yours. Otherwise, you would have been there early, And, number 3, I would have to say is quiet time, thinking time. One of my great mentors who it's a husband and wife team that I've done 10 other workshops, is that they've instilled into me 3 questions. They live in your state. They live in Mammoth Lakes. And they've instilled into me, and this was over 20 years ago. They've seen me at my worst. They've seen me through all the different stages of development. and they saved my life, right? They're one of the
Beautiful.
contributing people. Is that there's 3 questions that they instilled into me. How good do you want to be? How hard do you want to work? How fast do you want to get there? The beautiful part in all of this is because you have to take on these questions. You have to do the work. It's your life.
I love it.
When people start deflecting, and they, and I'm also I listen to language and how people communicate things based on the person that you were just talking about, right? About their situation. Right. They have non-committal language that they're using. They're not definitive. Well, maybe, or whatever. It's like, no, this is not a maybe world, right?
Yep. Either do or don't.
What's that?
Either do or don't.
Correct. 100%. And so I would say that those are 3 things just right, top of mind, that because the thinking part, and this goes back to one of my mentors, Jeffrey Gittimer, is that one of the things that's usually never on our schedules because of how fast-paced our lifestyle is thinking time.
So true.
Being grounded in what you need to do and why, right? You're free of all the noise. You cut yourself off from the world a little bit just to think about passion projects or what you want to do with your life or what you got going on this week. It can be as micro or as macro as you want, but it's time for you. And like Dr. Stephen Covey talked about, and I think that his methodology can be a way of life where you take deposits and withdrawals, and you bring it to life, where it's like, okay, are you giving out more of yourself withdrawals than you're taking in terms of deposits, right? And it's like, no wonder why you're tired, because you've got nothing in your tank.
I was giving it away.
Correct. And so that thinking time is, and obviously depending on how you're wired, you might be a morning person or a night person. There is nothing better in the morning than to wake up at 5 or 6, cup of coffee, pajamas, a notebook or a good book, and a cup of coffee, and I'm rolling.
Yeah.
Where before the craziness of the day, I'm grounded in something that's important to me. And I fully believe that there's a selfish component in this in a good way, where you need to be selfish for you.
Yeah.
Because if there's no you can't do that for other people.
It's true. It's true. It's funny. You remind me, my son's 7, excuse me, about 3 or 4 years ago, we had a book that was basically something like how to fill a bucket or filling buckets or something like that. And essentially the bucket, you know what I'm talking about. So it's like, you can't fill from an empty bucket. So the whole basis of the story was you got to fill from your own bucket. You shouldn't have holes in your bucket. You can't pour into somebody else's bucket if they have holes in their bucket, just talking about that. And I love that. And I use that analogy so many times that I ask people, I'm like, so who do you love on a scale of 1 to 10? And usually 99% of the time, it's either their spouse or their kid. I'm like, okay, so your kid, what's your kid's name? Jeremy. I'm like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love Jeremy? A 10. I'm like, okay, now I'm going to ask you a different question. I need you to be 100% honest with me. And I'm doing it over Zoom all the time. I'm like, how much do you love yourself? Well, I'm probably maybe a 6. I'm like, okay, so talk to me about that. Why isn't it an 8? Why isn't it a 9? I mean, it's never going to be perfect, but why aren't we up there? And 7 doesn't matter because everybody wants to pick 7 because so I always tell people on 1 to 7, they can't pick 7. And you find people like, oh shit, now I'm going to be found out. I'm either not doing enough or I better be really into it because he's going to ask me some questions. But when you sit there and find out about it, I'll ask him like, so you're loving yourself a 6. So you're taking care of yourself a 6, but you're saying you love yourself, your son a 10. I'm like, do you see the disparage in that? Do you see the incongruence in that? You're telling him, oh baby, you got to eat good. You got to take care of yourself. You got to get proper sleep. But what are you doing? What examples are you setting? Because, well, I feel guilty and I feel this and I feel this. And I'm like, what would it feel like not to feel like that? What preconceived notions, what beliefs are you hanging on to from your childhood that are causing those beliefs? And if you didn't think those anymore, how much different would your relationship with your son be? And how much more would he be thriving? Because now you'd be operating at a 10.
Right. Well, and how much of that is he actually believing just by observing what you're doing or not?
Right. Right. Kids are smart. Even from an early age. I've talked to so many kids, like when we go back to their childhood, like, Mike, so talk to me about your parents when you were 4 years old. Like, oh, we knew they were miserable, but they stayed together for another 10 years. And they basically taught us kids what not to do. But that's what we went all and did. And now they're in their 40s. And now I've realized I spent 20 years being married to a guy that I hated because that's what my parents did. I'm like, okay, I see, you start seeing, like Tony Robbins says, success leaves clues, or there's always going to be patterns. And you can kind of get that. So that's why we always encourage people to shift their beliefs about something. So my question to you is, and I've done a little bit of research, so I kind of think I know what the answer is going to be, but talk to me about a low point in your life where you had to really kind of get serious with yourself and have that confrontational conversation with yourself to say, hey, listen, the Brian Kelm that was,
Yep.
cannot be anymore. And talk to us about that transition,
Yeah.
because you're a smart, bright guy, and I want people to see where you got that from, because you got it from personal experience, and I know that. So talk to me about
it was a very pivotal time in my life where I was womanizing, I was partying too much, and I fell asleep at the wheel of a vehicle and I hit a tree. I almost got killed in a car accident, and had to be cut out. And I don't know if I was going to live or die, and they didn't. It happened in 2009, so it's coming up on, let's see here, to be 15 years in June, on June 14th of this year. And then 9 months after that, my dad passed away unexpectedly. So
you dealt with a lot.
Yeah, from 2009 to 2010. And I've done some training that specifically helped me out, Landmark Worldwide, which is very good training.
Yeah.
And don't believe what they say about it online for the naysayers. But it really helped clarify what was important to me, what mattered, but also though why my life was spared. And I try to be a spiritual person. However, though, me and the higher power have battles at times, right? But I'm a firm believer that my life was spared for something else, and it's not about me. My life is not about me. And I mean, let me just give everybody a kind of a view of who I was. I mean, I was trying things in business that were way ahead of the time, right? I would have kept trying, it didn't work. I kept trying, it didn't work. And I really took it out on myself, right? Hung around some questionable people. My behaviors were not, reminiscent upon gentlemen-like at all. And I was in a funk. I was in a bad funk. And I'm an only child, so it's not like I had, brothers or sisters to coach me, right?
Yeah.
And so, anybody that's was an only child, you found stuff out on your own. You were independent with other,
Oh yeah.
Your parents wanted to give you everything as much as they could, but they didn't know because they didn't have any other children to practice on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was the type of person that I would not go to family gatherings because I was busy working on my business, and I would just isolate myself, right? I had a certain view of the world that it was very about me. It was about, I only care about my work and being successful at it. There was many family gatherings I never went to. And I remember, and I was even the type of person where even asking, I was not in the military, but plenty of my family members were. And so I grew up with that mindset.
Yeah.
German and Irish family.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
You're a little bit of a temper, huh?
Yeah, a little bit, and have party nature. They
Right.
like to throw it on and have fun and eat lots of good food. But it was a period of time in my life where I felt like it was a weakness to even ask somebody to open up a door for me. That's what my mindset was, is because it was how I was trained. It was how I was programmed as a child, where you do it. You do it yourself.
Figure it out.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And
are you grateful for that? Are you grateful for that now? Because I think in my life, I was just telling my wife this the other day, is that as much as my mom pushed me, like if I didn't rake the leaves right, she would dump them out and make me rake them again, that kind of shit all the time. Didn't clean out the litter box right, she'd pour it back in, do it again, make sure you did it right. As much as I never, ever want to repeat that stuff, and I had to go back and write about it in my book, in a roundabout way, I'm grateful because she did teach me some tough lessons that I'm really glad I learned, because I see in my son that I don't do that with him. And I'm seeing, and I'm wondering, am I setting him up for a lack of success because I'm not harder on him?
Right. Well,
so are you grateful for those now?
I am grateful, because the way I look at work ethic, the way I look at integrity, the way I look at, taking action, right? And all of that, it's like, that's a huge thing that my parents instilled in me, and I see it every day, right? We've got some generations out there where they have not been given that information, or they've not been coached in that way. I'll just say that. Every generation has their dynamics, but hard work and effort amongst what I've seen so far in the younger generations is lacking a little bit. I'm not saying it can't be there, but I'm just saying however they were programmed and raised is lacking, or what they think is hard work is not Not at
No,
all. Not
go
at
work
all.
a fast food job for 6 months to 2 years, and you'll find out about hard. Go do construction.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, my both of my parents. I mean, they eventually graduated high school, but that was not within the cards. I mean, they were both farm kids. My dad was one of seven. My mom was the youngest of 13, and
Whoa.
so yeah, So my mom, she's no BS. She's straight up, like she can snuff BS a mile away. I mean, she's got an attitude like she'll be the most authentic, cordial person, but if you cross her, good luck. But if you're trying to,
That sounds like my mom.
yeah, if you're not
Without
gonna
the
be
cordial,
authentic
without the
and real,
cordial, she just tells you what's up.
oh yeah, yeah,
My mom
and
did.
it's not an acquired taste, but you really don't care, And so I would have to say is that what opened me up was that there are people that want to help you in the world,
Yeah.
right? But I didn't have those lenses that I looked at life through because I didn't have that experience, right? I was trapped for an hour and a half. I should have, to give everybody a visual, I was in a 3/4 ton cargo van. And after the fact, I found out that, you know how you got the engine compartment in most vehicles right in front of you, right?
Right.
Well, with a lot of cargo vans and those bigger vehicles, is that the engine compartment goes at a slant. So it's not like you have the embrace of the full engine compartment, right?
Right.
And so my front seat was underneath the engine. If you can envision that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, your life was definitely spared for a reason.
And to the left,
I mean, I've seen some of those pictures in other cars before, and you're like, how did that person? I mean, that's pure God. That's somebody was like saying, nope, not your time. But you see the accident, and you're just like, how did that happen?
well, and to the left of the tree was a gas line, and to the right was a house. And I ended up with being on crutches for 6 months, no surgeries. I had a couple broken ribs that they don't do anything about anymore, and then I had a couple broken bones in my left foot, and it was I had to learn how to walk with my arms because it's like the muscle memory of your legs that you can't use. Now you have to use your arms, right? So you have to change your programming up here that your motorboats, your feet are no longer your transportation anymore, But then going in for surgery and going in for PT appointments and all of that, where it's like, asking somebody to get the door, what pained me to know tomorrow. But now I look at it as like, wow, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to be of service to other people. It's okay to be humble. It's okay to let people in, which has been a very difficult thing for me in my life because I've been screwed over so many times. So I'm like, I'm not gonna do it anymore, And my dad passed away 9 months after that, and that was it was very difficult. Because it's like to hold it together for myself that my life has been spared, but then why is this happening to me? But
Conversations with God.
well, and I've had some good friends over the years, and I'm a firm believer in this, is that, and I've said this in other shows, is that I'm made up of everybody that I've ever witnessed, good, bad, or other.
Of course. Yep.
My makeup is
Some of
of
our
everybody. How I think now, what I do. It's just the collection of everybody that I've ever had in my life. It doesn't matter if it was a breakup or an ex or whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm conditioned, and I am who I am as a result of all those things happening and all those people. And so my dad said a few things before he passed away. As he goes, no matter. He said before one time before Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving before he passed away, he goes, Brian, I don't want to tell you how to live life, but if Mom or I should pass away and you don't know your family, you're going to be pretty lonely. And so he just had a knack and a craft to put stuff on me. He was very intuitive, but not force it upon me. He still let me make my own choices. Okay. And then something I live by every day is he said, what is popular might not always be right, but what is right might not always be popular.
I love that one.
And so he wanted me, the reason why he was hard on me as a kid is because he wanted me to thrive in the world. He didn't want me to just get by.
Right.
And that's all mindset. That's how you're trained. That's how you're conditioned, and hard work, and, really learning the best way, which is the hardest way. And it's what makes me who I am today, and I get it. It's not, my style is not for everybody, but I'm I'm who I am, and that's okay if somebody doesn't, because a lot of people don't want it straight up. They don't want somebody that's very authentic and it's not going to puff
I
your
have
chest
no idea what
out
you're talking about, Brian.
Yeah. I mean, like I was just having,
$1.
like I was just having, and it's amazing to me about like how universal it is, where it's just like, okay, about integrity, where it's like somebody says they're going to do something and then they don't do it. Okay.
Yep.
And then when you call them out, they're like, oh, I have plenty of integrity. Okay. Well, that might be true, but you didn't show that in this circumstance.
And that's where I go, tell me your definition of integrity. That's something I've been doing, Brian, lately, is I've just been asking, not really on the show. I mean, sometimes on the show, I mean, actually more on the show, actually, if I'm being honest, but we'll bring up a word like, oh, I did the best I could. I'm like, talk to me about your best. And so I've been asking people, like, okay, so you say you have integrity. What is your definition of integrity? Because perhaps your definition of integrity and mine are different. So we can have a conversation about that. And perhaps we could both walk away learning a little bit something about what each other thinks is integrity. Because maybe like, okay, I think integrity is this with values and morals. And okay, well, I think integrity is more of this. Okay, cool. Let's try to see it in the middle, because so oftentimes we don't talk about it and we both walk away thinking that the other person is wrong. Right. And that's one thing I've learned in my life that has been, I mean, such a huge blessing. You mentioned Covey earlier. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Mm-hmm. That thing has been massive in my life. When I first started coaching, I was more of a relationship specific coach. I was helping people with relationships, personal, professional communication, listening, and, assumptions and stuff like that, being able to deal with conflict management. And that was my wheelhouse until I got so tired of hearing about people's relationships. I switched. I was like, I'm going to go mindset. I think I'm going to be a mindset coach. I can't listen to this. And he did this and he did this and then they did that. I'm like, oh my God, shut up. You're making it hurt. You're making it worse. But in what we've been talking about, one of the things that I do care about you, and I realized that I appreciate about you, is that you're real. And you just said that. You were talking about your mom and being real. And obviously I'm who I am. I've been on that journey. I just showed, I think it was on last week's show. I did it by myself, but I actually showed a video of me speaking in a suit and tie without my hat on, with my hair, when I grew my hair out. And people were tripping out. And I'm like, but do you think that person was happy? I was successful. Right. I was very successful. I had the egoic validation. I was on stages. I was doing all these things, making lots of money, had my corporate job, 6 figures, blah, 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 buying shit. Everything was good. But I was unhappy inside because I wasn't real. Yeah. Talk to us about people watching and listening to this, how critical it is to get real with yourself. We talked about that before, that confrontational conversation. But how do we get people to embrace and allow their true self to be exposed, I guess, and to understand that if people around them don't get it, that's okay, that you find your group. And when you find your group, that is what really truly empowers you and gets you to go. I was listening to something you had said before, and you are the same. I've had to wish so many people in my life well. Yeah. My own sister, I have a half sister. We only shared little bits and pieces of our history together, but I realized I had to wish her well because she was a very, very toxic person. I've had to wish best friends well because we've changed. And like, Chris, you always seem like you're too good and you're too this. And I'm like, I just keep growing. You're not growing. You're doing the same fucking thing. You've been bitching about the same thing for 16 years, dude. I can't take it anymore. I love you. I'll be there for you, but I'm just not going to go hang out anymore because I'm just elevating. I need to surround myself with the 5 people that I want to be like most. And I found through that process of being that authentic person that I've had to say goodbye to some people, but I've had so many more people like yourself. What's this guy about? Why is he wearing a bandana? Why is he sweating? And I've attracted so many people that are part of my tribe. How can we get people to embrace their true self and attract their tribe? Is what I'm trying to get at.
I think you need to take time away from to figure stuff out. Right.
True.
I mean, obviously I'm biased because I've had some stuff go on in my life. And if you haven't had that, that's okay. There's nothing wrong there. You're just going to go at it in a different way. But I think that you really need to be real with yourself. You need to stop the fakeness, and if you don't think you are, ask somebody that's going to be real and raw with you. Yeah. No pun intended, but you need to ask somebody that's going to give it to you like an acting coach or something. They're going to be straight with you.
Yeah. Somebody who loves you and wants you to, it's going to suck, but it's going to be better down the road.
Because I mean, there's too much of this pattern, like somebody's asking for a critique or whatever out of both sides of their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
That they want you to
make me look fat. No, the pants don't make you look fat. You're fat, and you need to go to the gym. And let's go. Come on, let's both go to the gym.
Or it's kind of like reviews today, where it's like, okay, well, I want you to say all the good things about me, but hold back the stuff that can really make a difference. You know what I mean? Like puff out my chest. So back to the question, the reason why I say that you have to start from within is because that's where the foundation is. You have to shut off all the noise. And what I mean by that is all the stuff that's not essential, right?
Yeah.
All the social media, all the whatever, right? If you have not identified what your commitments are to yourself and for your life, you got to start there, right? And I'm
Yeah.
not a big goals person. I don't know. I just don't like it. I'd rather have commitments, right? Because commitments go above and beyond, in my opinion. Now, it might be semantics to some people, but I think commitments is that, okay, these go deeper, right? Versus a goal that may or may not happen, right?
Right.
So I say that your self-belief, because if you have not fully gone in to do an assessment of yourself, start there. Unapologetically.
What do you mean by that assessment? What's involved in that assessment? Do you go like, mental, spiritual? Do you have like categories? How does that work?
I would have to say it's like, okay, mental, do you wish you were somebody else, right? Where are you? Are you rock solid mentally? Do you wish you were somebody else? Do you have to buy clothes to feel important, right? Where are you on that level of, are you okay in your own skin?
Yeah.
Or do you feel like you have to have this nice car or new nails or this new phone or something like that, right? Because it's either internal or external is everything we're talking about here, right? And everything that is going to get you to the next level is all internal. It's all the mindset work, all of it, every single bit of it. But then you also realize about all the external stuff, it's just a ploy. It's just a narrative that they want you to live into.
True.
But if you're vulnerable because this is lacking and this is lacking, well, then of course you're going to be vulnerable to things that if you have this product or have this way of life, that everything's going to be great. Ask anybody that bought a brand new car when they didn't need a brand new car, how that works.
That's what they call buyer's remorse. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, by the way, I have this payment on this new car, but I still have my same old problems.
Yep, exactly.
Right? Number two is it's everything internal. I would say it's the mental, it's the physical, right? What are you doing about what you got going on, right? Are you doing anything, right? One of the things that I learned to go against my anxiety is tell yourself, just get started. I'm gonna just start that. Tell yourself that.
Yep.
Right?
Imperfect action.
For me, I would have analysis paralysis about writing an article. It's due in a week. I got to get it going. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Well, all that anxiety is only pushing me away from ever get started on there, as opposed to telling myself, I'm going to just start that. I'm going to write a line. I got my pencil.
You get 2 sentences down.
And then you go with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Spiritual. Where are you at with that? Right. But also, though, do you feel like you have to go to church? Do you feel like you have to declare a religion or whatever? Where are you on that level? Because some people might be more open to that and want to do that in a certain way. But for me, but you have to do it for you. You can't do it to please other people. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Let's see your other layers. I mean, I would say the mental, the physical, the spiritual. Let me see here. How do you do that? I mean, do you have a regimen? Do you have a schedule, a daily schedule, right? Or is it just kind of willy-nilly, right? Do you have a journal? Do you write in a journal? I write in a journal every day. A lot of the stuff is the same stuff.
Pick it back up.
It's like you declare, like, my one word that I've had for probably 3 or 4 years is disruption. Everything about my life is about disrupting everything to the most uncomfortable way that I know possible. Everything.
So you subscribe to the Goggins principle a little bit?
I like Goggins. I've read his books, but it's like, if that is his thing, great. But it didn't come from that.
Yeah.
Because I'm the type of person that is like, I do my own thing. I am my own person, but I will find vulnerabilities in something, not to call people out, but to be like, what is right? Is somebody serving you to the best of the abilities? Like, you look for that piece that's missing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. What Goggins talks about is like the 40%, right? Most people give 40%, or they give 60%, but they have 40% remaining. So just when they think that they're tapped out, no, they got more to go.
Yep.
But they don't know that because they've never pushed themselves to that level before. Let me see here.
I'm listening. While you think about that, I'm listening to a book called The Comfort Crisis. It's really, really good. Really, really good. Somebody told me I had to listen to it, and I was listening to 2 other books, and I was bored of them, and I hadn't been listening to books in months. I'd like gotten out of the habit of reading and listening, and I just like months. And I'm normally like Johnny on the spot about reading and doing that. Comfort Crisis. It's really, really good.
Comfort Crisis. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
But you have to put you have to put yourself you have to put yourself on the docket that you're going to work on yourself every day.
Yeah.
And you have to do it in an aggressive way. You can't do it in a very very lollygag type of way.
Discipline. Yeah, discipline. Make the commitment. Do 75 hard, right?
Oh, 100%.
Say you're going to do it and don't look back.
And it's like, I don't want to sound cliche or whatever, but you have to do things that are uncomfortable. You always do, right?
Every week.
You every week, every day, every minute, you have to do things that are uncomfortable. Have an accountability partner. But obviously that takes a lot, because you have to have somebody that's going to kick your butt.
Mm-hmm.
Because what a lot of people, I can see it, and I've heard many people say, is that, oh, you're being too harsh or whatever. It's just like, okay, no, I'm holding you accountable to what you declared you wanted out of your life. Yeah. How is that being hard on you if you're able to get everything that's been eluding you for years or weeks or months or whatever?
Thank you.
That's
what I have I have a group accountability coaching program, and not only do they have the accountability from me twice a month, but they also have weekly accountability from their accountability partners. Yeah. And I had to get in their asses. I'm like, if somebody says they're going to get it done, you got to say, okay, why didn't you get it done? What was your excuse? How are you going to overcome that excuse next time? And if the person shows up again and say, are you fucking serious about doing this or not? If you're not serious about doing it, let's take it off the radar and let's do something else that you're actually going to commit to. And let's get you some results and some action so you can get some confidence and be able to do more. And it's like you have to be that proper I hate when I have accountability partners, because 99% of them, I can find a way to sit there and say, well, I was gonna, like, I've had so many people like, Chris, where's your book? Chris, where's your book? And people will say, well, you said you were going to get it done. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I had this come up. Now I got to edit these things. They're like, okay, well, I'm looking forward to it. But nobody says like, okay, so when's your new date? What are you going to do? They're just like, okay, I'm looking forward to it. I'm like, damn, I wish somebody would get my ass about that.
And I think another thing too is that you need to get into a class. Right. You need to do something that disrupts your normal flow. Right. Yeah. One of the like whether it's a coaching program, or a video program, if the dollars are not there to do something more hands-on or weekly or whatever, whoever that is, because you need to be shaken up, because the more you get shaken up, it's just like the ball rolling. Once the ball gets rolling, you're going to want more of it, because you're like, whoa, right. You're seeing pieces of yourself that you never saw before. Right. Like for me, improv is such a great skill, because it's universal for life. It's universal for everything. It's not just for performing arts. And so if you want to get out of your skin, there's a reason why 101 improv classes are anybody and everybody. You can have people that are doing it for dating, to have better social skills because their occupation doesn't allow for it, or whatever the case may be. Yeah. Get yourself to do something that is hard. Get yourself to do something that you have to commit to. Because if you fall short on it, at least you did it. Mm-hmm. But something that you can't predict, and we talked about this earlier, about the definitions of things, right? Yeah. I love it where when somebody falls short on their goals, it's because they're defining the goal for themselves based on where they are versus being pushed into what it really is. Like, Let me give an example, like my coaches from Mammoth Lakes, where whenever somebody's doing an interpretation for a first dancer introduction or a love story or whatever it is that it's not uncommon for people to say, well, that's not what I normally do, after they did a take on video, right? Mm-hmm. Well, then one of the instructors is going to say, well, do what you normally do, because then I can critique it. I can offer coaching, right? People want to flee from not having that be examined so they know exactly what it is I can help you with. People get very sneaky about that, but you're not helping yourself unless you're willing to be put under the radar. You're not helping yourself at all.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I'm where I'm at today, is I've constantly done that. I've constantly sought that advice. And as ugly as it's been in many situations, that's been, when I look back on my life, those have been breaking points, like literal breaking points. Like, I didn't think I could go back to school and get my GED after being a 7th grade dropout. But again, I rewrote my beliefs, and I went back and I said, okay, fuck, I just got to take imperfect action. I just got to show up there. All I have to do is take the test. They're going to tell me, they're going to validate it, and I'll be done. I won't have to deal with this anymore. Right. I went and took the test. They're like, well, you're not too bad off. You need about 3 months worth of, remedial training. And I was in continuation school. And then I went back and took the test, and they said, you've graduated. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm done with that. And then the next thing was like, oh, Chris, you're going to go to college? I'm like, what the fuck do you want from me? Again, I took the imperfect action. I walked up to Golden West Community College here in Southern California. It was like scared to death to walk through the door because and this is going to lead to my next question for you, is I walked up to the door and I thought, I'm going to walk through this door. They're going to laugh my ass off because I have a GED. I don't have a high school diploma like everybody else. And I'm going to get ridiculed. And this is going to be embarrassing, but at least I can go back and drink beer and hang out with my friends. Walk through the door, super long hair, leather jacket, just threw my cigarette out. I'm all of 18 years old and got a beard. And I walk in, I'm not like any of these other kids, right? I'm walking in there like looking like a 30-year-old man. And I said, hi. I said, I have no idea what I'm doing. I said, but I'd like to come to school here. I have a GED. Do you guys accept those? And she looked at me. She goes, oh, we'll take care of you. Yeah, of course. We have GEDs. We have women that or girls that get pregnant. Da, da, da. Come on with me, blah, blah, blah. 3.5 hours later, I walked out of there with a business major. I walked out of there with my first class, which was interpersonal communication class, which I thought was stupid. I'm like, these fucking people think I can't talk. Like, I'm literally in a fucking class to talk. I was so mad. I was so embarrassed. My friends are like, what class did you get? And I said, this thing called interpersonal communication. Like, well, isn't that just talking? And I'm like, I guess so. I don't know. One of the best classes I ever took, helped me out so much in my life because it taught me about listening and paraphrasing and understanding and speaking and thinking about what you're going to say instead of just blah, 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 all that other good shit. But the thing that led me up to that I want to talk to you about before we have to end out the show is, how have you ever dealt? And let me think about this. Let me rephrase this. What advice do you have for people who perhaps deal with that imposter syndrome? Because that was actually what I did the show on last week. Somebody had a personal request from me and said, hey, Chris, if you got an open show, I'd love for you to do it on imposter syndrome. And I did some research on it because I knew what it was. And I know we've all dealt with it, but I was like, let me dig into this a little bit and kind of find, some of the psychological ways we can overcome that and how, just be more versed on it, since it was just me talking as opposed to talking with a guest. Sure. What's been your experience with imposter syndrome, and what's been some of the defining moments that have helped you let that go?
Sure. Number one, and I'm just quick witting these just so I don't forget them, right? Number one, because there's a lot. Anybody that's a performer, anybody that's a business owner, anybody that is trying to do big things has it, okay? And if you don't, it's coming. You know what I mean? Number one is that it's never going away.
Yeah.
I remember Russell Crowe many, many years ago when he did the Gladiator film, right? He said publicly, if I knew I was any good, I wouldn't work as hard.
Wow.
And so it's like okay, Russell Crowe, Academy Award winner, right? It's like, okay, he still thinks he's like nothing unless he works his butt off every day. No matter how many awards, no matter how he is in Hollywood or the films that people will continue to watch, he goes back to the payment every day. And it's like, if I don't work my butt off today, I'm not any good, right? Yeah. Number two is you always need to stay in motion, right? Your higher calling needs to come out every single day of every single moment. Number three is you have to show up no matter what. Because if you can succeed in those moments where you want to give up and not do it, if that's the hardest thing you're ever going to do, you're going to move past it. Because every day when you're doing what you love, it's not like a day you're working at all, because you're driven by something greater. Okay. Number four, you don't care about agreement. You don't care about agreement about like what you're doing, if it makes sense, if people, whatever. And that leads you to not care that you're going to do a podcast. You're going to show up on video, right? Because you're not doing it for the likes and all of that. You're doing it for what you can share. You're doing it for the difference you can make. Okay. And number five, if you're ever in a rut, you do something for other people. Get your mind out of your own skin and out of your own thoughts. Go help somebody else out. And when you make their day, then go back to your stuff and you'll look at stuff differently. Those are like five of them that really stand out to me, but it's like, it's never going to go away.
Yeah. It ebbs and flows. I mean, it ebbs and flows in what it is that you do. And I love what you said earlier about getting uncomfortable is like, when you think back on our lives and we think about the hero's journey, the Joseph Campbell story, which is an amazing depiction of what it is that we go through, the peaks and the valleys and everything that, it's those uncomfortable moments, those awkward moments that help us the most. When we look back on those defining moments, man, I'm so glad that, for me personally, I'm glad that I was a part of a board in my professional career. And on that board, it was a private board, but because of my personality, somebody said, you should be our co-chair. You should be like the president of the board and go out there and be on stage and tell everybody what's going on. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? No. I was shy. And this is when I was super young. I'm like, no, you're a natural. And I went out there on stage and killed it. And everybody's like, you should be a speaker. That's when I started speaking for industry things. And that's when I found out that if I shared my story, tons of people wanted to hear it. And it was like, it was so uncomfortable, but I'm so glad. And so I think that's one thing we can stress upon everybody that's watching this and listening to this is that I say once a week. I used to say daily, but I think that's too big of an ask. But I just tell people out of 7 days, there's 52 weeks in a year. Is it reasonable? Is it achievable? Is it realistic to say I can get out of my comfort zone once out of those 7 days in a way that I can learn and grow from my situation? So if I'm paralyzed and going to a networking event, can I go to one meetup every single week? And if nothing else, I walk in, I say, hi, my name's Meredith, and I'm a sales rep for a pharmaceutical company. And you sit down and you listen to it, and then you go home and you go, fuck, I did it. And then you go do it again next week. Hi, I'm Meredith. I'm a pharmaceutical sales. What do you do? And then the next week, if you just keep going doing that and you build that muscle. But if you sit there and you hope, wish, and pray and think about it, and you do, someday I hope I'm outgoing. Hope someday I can start a podcast. It's like, fuck that. You have to start it today. Like, go take that imperfect action every single day and learn from it, and you'll continue to grow. There's that book out there, and I know you know about it. The One Thing.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yep.
By,
Gary Keller.
Gary Keller talking about what's the one thing I can do today by which doing so will make it easier for me to do the rest of the things. I can remember it's been years since I read it. I studied it. But what are your thoughts on that? To close out the show, and then I want people to find out where they can get a hold of you. Yeah. What is it that you want people to really like take about in far as the action of what we talked about tonight that can really help them embrace who they are, change their perspectives about their past failures and their mistakes, and to get real and honest with themselves, to take that time to love themselves, to take time to think, like the book says, think and grow rich. Yeah. What is a summation you could put on that for people to really take home tonight?
Sure. One thing I grapple with is self-love, right? In terms of loving myself enough, so anything dealing with yourself, your self-esteem, your self-concept, your self-respect, all of that is that you need to start there. And that's a daily practice, right? It's kind of like building a house. If you have a sloppy foundation, you're not going to put a 3rd-story roof on that house. It's just not going to happen. So if you take yourself and you look at yourself like a house, you have to have a solid foundation. Okay. That's number one. Number two is that you have to have quiet time every day. And I know I'm repeating myself from earlier in the show, but
no, it's good. I want you to put a bow on it.
Yeah. But if you don't have quiet time, you don't know what's important to you. You don't know what you're striving for, right? You're not grounded in yourself if you don't have quiet time, right? And it's selfish in a good way, because for as much as you're giving out to other people, you have to restore yourself. Okay.
And how much is that a day, Brian? What do you think about that? 'Cause so many people think, I don't have that much time for myself. I mean, I look at it, if I get 10 minutes, 15 minutes of quiet time, I'm doing pretty fucking good.
Yeah. We all have the time. We just choose not to decide on it, or we just not choose to use it for that. Right. Yep. We all have the time. And I think that that's a very slippery slope for a lot of people, is because they don't want to look for it. They don't want to change up their whole world. Right. That's kind of like I wish I would have statement, right?
Yeah.
I wish I would have, or I didn't know that it could be that simple. Well, yeah, because you waited 10 years to do that. And then when you actually did it, you're like, wow, I built up so much meaning and such a barrier in between me and that thing I wanted to do. Then no wonder why because your initial meaning of what gets you to not do that thing only is going to get bigger and farther away,
Exactly.
Excuse me. A couple more things is that you have to want it more than anything else in the world.
Like air.
You have to want it. It does, and here's the thing. Don't look for validation in the external world. Don't look for validation of other people. Heck, I wouldn't even tell other people, because as long as it makes sense to you, that's all that matters, right? Because your passions, your desires, everything you want to achieve is your thing. It's not anybody else's thing. Okay. Mm-hmm. There was a few others, but I can't recall what they are.
Well, I tell you what we can do is we can have you back on the show, because I've loved this conversation tonight, Brian. I mean, it's been pure fire. I know between the two of us, we have definitely administered many, many strategies that people can take advantage of and start using. Not someday, they can start doing those things today. They can start making those priorities today. Hey, let me carve out some time for myself to journal. Let me carve out some time for myself to read a book. Let me continue to enrich and grow myself and make myself a priority. And the biggest thing I tell people is, like, when you stop tolerating your own bullshit and you stop tolerating the bullshit from other people and inanimate objects, when you start really identifying what you're tolerating and you get rid of a third of that stuff, it's amazing how many resources, how much time and how much energy and how much health you can open up for yourself, and just by doing those little bitty things. So Brian, where can people get a hold of you and continue the conversation, learn more about you?
Sure. I
mean, wedding planner, so you're a wedding planner as well, and an aficionado for weddings as well. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me on Facebook. Just send me a friend request. I'm a really open book. You know, I love talking about. I'm a huge Andy Frisella fan, and he talks about personal excellence. You know, that it's like that's the biggest way that we combat our lives is that we do everything to the nth degree. We become the standard, right? So look me up on Facebook. I'm there. What's on the screen right now is my business Facebook business page.
You want to just say it out for the podcast people? Sure.
So, Facebook.com/Brian Kelm Productions. So BrianKelm Productions on Facebook. And then also, though, it's on Instagram, my business page is Brian Kelm Productions Official. And that's the handle on Instagram. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm a relationship builder. I love talking to people, but I am a pretty straight up person. You know what I mean? Like where we're going to get into we're not going to talk about much, airy fairy superficial stuff because that kind of stuff doesn't really
straight like me, right? No self-help fluffy bullshit.
Yeah. No fluffy, no how's the weather, how the Dodgers doing. No. That's cool if you want to talk about that stuff, but it's like, what's really at stake here? What do you really want to move the needle on, and how can I help?
I love that. Thank you, Brian Kelm, ladies and gentlemen, on the Raw Unscripted Show. Brother, thank you. This has been exactly what I anticipated it to be. So thank you. I'm going to put you backstage for a second. Yeah. Don't go anywhere. So I'm going to close out the show, and then so I can just still have a word with you. But thank you, Brian Kelm, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that is fire. That was a pure fire conversation. And I encourage you, if you came into that conversation at any point in time halfway through, because I know some of you guys, when you're watching the video cast, you guys roll in a little bit later because you think that Christopher's still mabbing and jabbing, but now we're starting the show off right away. So I encourage you to go back and watch the beginning of the show and do this thing. You want to fucking change things in your life, write it down. See, I have stuff written down on mine. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but every day I buy these from Amazon. They're like, I don't know, $15 for a whole fucking pack of them. And every day I write down what it is that I'm going to do. The top 3 things are my needle movers. What is going to move the needle? We talked about it briefly in here. The one thing, what's going to move the needle on my business? What's going to move the needle on my health? What's going to move the needle on my relationships? What's going to move the needle on my finances? What's going to move whatever it is for me? I usually try to put one of each. And then every single day, as I'm taking that progressive action, and like Brian, when I talked about, stop fucking looking for perfection. It doesn't have to be perfect. Jesus Christ, just put it out. That's why they have revisions. If your book isn't perfect, put it out. Guess what? People are going to write reviews and they're going to say, oh my God, I found so many typos. Well, tell you what, maybe for, a free copy of my next book, if you tell me all the typos you found, I'll give you a free copy, whatever it is might be. You guys can get resourceful, but the point is take that imperfect action every single day, because as you grow and as you learn every single day, you become a little bit wiser and a little bit wiser and a little bit wiser. And it's like the savings in your, supposed savings account, I guess. You put money in there, and every single day there's a little bit of interest that develops, and you get that compound interest, and it goes back into the principal, and the principal multiplies. And all of a sudden, at the end of the year, you put in $1,000 and you got $1,001 back for you to focus on where it is that you are at. So we talked about self-love. Big component. Ask yourself, do I love myself? Yes or no? And be honest with yourself. And if you struggle with loving yourself, what are some things you could start to do today? What are some things you could do today? I could take some time to take a bubble bath. I can take some time to read a magazine. I know so many people out there, and especially women. So you women, you need to take better care of yourselves. You're always doing for everybody else, but you need to do for yourself. You need to fill your own bucket. We talked about this in this broadcast, and I can't emphasize that so much. It's not being selfish. And if people start calling you selfish, fuck those people, get new people. Period. End of story. Even if they're family, you need to be around people that say, hey, you need to take care of yourself. Why don't you go buy yourself something nice? Why don't you go invest in some new clothes? You haven't bought new clothes in 20 years, whatever it might be. Take care of yourself, love yourself, because when you love yourself, you wake up every single day and you have a little bit more spring in your step. You feel a little bit better. You're nicer to people. People are nicer to you. You get better at your job. Your job gets you more revenue. You buy more things. You feel better. You do more good in the world. You make the world a better place. You're leading by example. You're being authentic. You're being real. And guess what you do? You leave a legacy that you're fucking proud of. That's what you do. It doesn't matter what you buy. It doesn't matter what you've done or anything else. It matters what it is that you're doing in this world to leave a legacy with the people that are most important to you, so that they can say, hey, wow, Christopher's gone, but I'm going to always live my no excuses, unstoppable life. Christopher may be gone, but I'm always going to believe in myself. So I may be gone, but the legacy that I'm leaving every single day with these videos that I do and everything else that I do in my life, every single day with people in the cashiers, everywhere, I'm constantly trying to make people have a great day. And so that's the legacy I want to leave behind. So you got to ask yourself, what legacy are you going to leave behind, ladies and gentlemen? We're going to be back here next week on the Raw Unscripted Show. If you guys aren't following us on the podcast, go find us anywhere podcasts are sold. Sign up for the podcast. We have a bazillion shows. We have 246 shows that I personally believe are quite amazing. I think there's a couple of, so-sos in there when I first started out, but we always do that. Go out there and follow the show. I love you guys. We'll be back here next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to be doing a solo show, I believe, next week because my guest just canceled. How did they do that? But anyways,